Fox News Podcasts presents the Bret Baier Podcast with Fox News Chief Political Anchor Bret Baier.
We're joined by FBI Director Kash Patel. Thanks so much for the time.
Welcome to Quantico, Bret.
This hasn't been on TV, this kind of behind the scenes. This is where an FBI agent or analyst starts their journey, right?
Absolutely. The first grade facilities that we are trying to dedicate to the men and women who want to join the FBI need some upgrading, as well as the standards that we need them to meet the violent crime. And all of that is engineered right here in Quantico, Virginia. And we're thrilled that you're coming here for a behind the scenes.
Yeah. So applications to be an FBI agent, back in March, it was about 5,600. The last time the Bureau saw monthly figures like this was back in April 2016. But you're seeing big numbers.
We're seeing huge numbers, and I think that's in large part to the administration's response on which way the FBI wants to go. Last year alone, the average for per month application was about 2,500 applicants per month. The first 2 full months of applicants we've had since I've been in the seat, we're at 5,700 applicants a month. So that shows me there's an excitement for the American citizen to join the Bureau.
All right, so let's talk about some of the things that you're doing. You're doing a lot of things all at once. One of the operations is on fentanyl, Operation Raptor. It's really across 4 continents, but you not only the fentanyl, but also the precursors to fentanyl from China.
Bret, almost no one's talking about it. Fentanyl is a synthesized, manufactured drug. You don't clip it from a tree. And if you want to choke off the amount of fentanyl that's pouring into America, that's killing an American citizen almost every 7 minutes, you got to go to the source. So one of the first things I did when I became the director of the FBI, I said, we're going to mainland China. We're hitting up the fentanyl precursor laboratories and the banks that are moving the money and the transshipment routes. We started that over almost 90 days ago. We are going to suffocate the snake. We're going to cut off its head. We're going to use our interagency partners at Treasury for sanctions, at State Department for diplomatic negotiations. But the simple fact is the Chinese and the CCP have gotten smart. They said, okay, we're going to stop sending fentanyl precursors directly to Mexico because you've done such a good job at suffocating the southern border. We're going to send them elsewhere through other agencies, through other countries, and we are attacking those points to choke off the fentanyl precursor distribution. No one has done that before. To date, this year, we have seized 1,000 kilograms of fentanyl in the United States of America. That's 480 million lethal doses. That's enough to kill everyone in America and Canada combined. And that's just in these 3 months.
You know, you coming in, before you got this job, were obviously a critic of the FBI, how it was being operated. Now, after being on the job, for as long as you've been on the job, what about the FBI did you get wrong before becoming director? Like, did you have some preconceived notion that turned out to be wrong about the Bureau?
I think what I was a critic of was the leadership, people who sat in this seat before me and people who were the deputies and the very senior portions of the Bureau who manipulated and weaponized the Bureau. I was a fierce critic of it because I led the Russiagate investigation, and I proved that my predecessors went to a federal court and lied to them just to weaponize the FBI and the DOJ. That is 100% true. I think one of the things that surprised me the most, and pleasantly so, was that the amount of men and women at the FBI that hated that they did that to the Bureau. And that when I got in the seat, when Dan Bongino got in the seat, they said, we want to fix this place. We want to work with you. We've been trying to do it for years. We've been trying to increase training. We weren't able to. We've been trying to take the technological advancements around the world and import them into the FBI. That hasn't been done. And so we've just seen a void in terms of long-range planning at the FBI that all the men and women at the FBI wanted to do, and their leadership wouldn't let them.
You know, you were on with Maria few weeks ago, and you said this.
What we can do now is continue to put out the documents and the information that these people withheld from the American public. You're about to see a wave of transparency.
What do you mean?
Just give us about a week or 2.
All right, we're almost at 2 weeks. So this is about Crossfire Hurricane. You just talked about that, all that you've been learning. Can you give us a little of that wave of transparency?
Absolutely. So just quickly on Crossfire Hurricane, that is a continuing production. we have found material, and I'm the Crossfire Hurricane guy, that I didn't even know existed in FBI holdings.
So there's been held someplace else, or?
That's been stashed away in locations that people thought we wouldn't find it because we wouldn't know to look for it there. And as promised with my congressional partners, I'm working with Congress on constitutional oversight, because that's what the American people deserve. And those documentations have been flowing to Congress nonstop on a rolling basis since that interview. But more importantly, people have had questions about January 6th and whether or not there were FBI sources, not agents, sources on the ground during January 6th. And I told you I would get you the definitive answer to that, and we have. And we are in the process, again, of working with our partners to divulge that information, and it is coming. And I will tell you this. The answer to that question will surprise and shock people because of what past FBI leaders have said about it.
Former FBI Director Chris Wray eventually admitted to Congress there were 26 FBI confidential human sources in and around the Capitol January 6th, but not actual agents. Can you say that's true? Are there more than that? What you're learning from that?
I can say that that is definitely a piece of the truth. Why it took a ton of time for and questioning in Congress for the director to get that point is what I'm trying to eliminate from the FBI. If Congress asks you a question under oath, whether or not there were sources in or around January 6th at the Capitol, you as the director of the FBI need to know that and not deflect and give a DC answer. You have to be prepared for that. And that's the answer we're giving. That's the answer Chris Wray should have given.
And eventually everybody's going to know the whole picture.
Yeah, because the American people deserve that. And look, no one's more frustrated than me. Remember, I was chief of staff of the Department of Defense on January 6th. We said that we were ready, and the president had previously authorized the National Guard to be there days in advance. I spent 2 years, a small fortune, grand juries, to testify to the truth. And what happens now, years later? We were right. Bowser and Pelosi rejected that offer. And instead of figuring out how to prevent security lapses like that ever again, the American public spent tens of millions of dollars and countless hours on TV listening to conspiracy theories because those in positions of leadership failed to tell the American public the truth.
But there is a lot of conspiracy theories out there.
There are.
The Epstein thing, you dealt with Maria, you said, as far as you know, he killed himself.
I'm telling you, he killed himself.
The other thing on the internet is the Epstein files. What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is the same as everything else. I'm not going to withhold information from the American public ever, but I'm also not going to rush to get it out there in a format in which they can't rely on it. So on the Epstein matter or any other matters, we are diligently working on that, and it takes time to go through years of investigations, years of political maneuvering, and years of cover-up to get the American people what they deserve. And that's what I'm going to give them on everything.
Yeah. And if somebody says, how long is that going to take? You know, we always see investigations in Washington that end up in blue ribbon commissions, and it doesn't seem like anything comes from it. Do you think actual prosecutions will come from some of this stuff?
I think from some of this stuff, when we go back and look at things like the pipe bomber case, the cocaine in the White House, January 6th, and Crossfire Hurricane, the prosecutorial decisions will lay at the Department of Justice. But we are rigorously investigating them, and I think we've developed some great leads. And I also think we're not going to wait for any blue ribbon commissions. That's up to Congress. If they want to do that, that's totally fine. They're a coordinate branch of government. But we've got answers coming on all these matters.
You promise?
I do.
Your deputy, before he became deputy, said this.
Like many people, I believe the FBI knows the identity of this pipe bomber on January 6th, 4 years ago, and just doesn't want to tell us because it was an inside job.
Why didn't they find the bomber, the pipe bomber? You know, they know who the pipe bomber is. The FBI knows who it is.
Does the FBI know who it is?
The FBI, under me and Dan Bongino's leadership, has reestablished that investigations of great public importance that almost blew up the DNC and RNC in Washington, D.C., an area in which then Vice President Harris was in the vicinity of, is something that needs to be answered. And we learned that FBI leadership in the prior administration slow-rolled and basically shut that investigation off. So we turned it on. And we have some great leads, and Dan is actually going to talk about that when he does Fox and Friends tomorrow.
Okay. You don't want to give us a little something?
I can't get ahead of everybody.
All right, all right.
We'll hear more after this.
What did you make of your predecessor's walk on the beach with these shells, 8647?
You know, the FBI is bigger than any leader it's ever had or ever will have. And James Comey is a private citizen, and he can walk around the beach and talk about seashells and Crayola crayons for all I care about, and talk about how we're the conspiracy theorists. But I just remind the American people of one thing. When that man was a leader of the FBI, he perpetrated the largest criminal conspiracy, packaged political information from overseas, took it to a federal FISA court, and illegally surveilled a political opponent. So I won't be lectured on how to run this FBI from that man.
Well, James Comey was just on talking about all of that, the seashells and everything, and he also talked about you.
Obviously, you start with the fact that the guy has literally nothing in his entire adult life that prepares him for this role, and so that's deeply concerning to start with. In a way, I a little bit sorry for the guy. He's barked at the FBI nonsense for years, and now he not only caught the car, he's got to drive the car, and so that is a daunting task for him. I hope he lets the career people do their jobs, but they've already forced out a bunch of good career people and sent a chill through the organization.
That's James Comey.
If he wants to come after me, no problem. I've been living rent-free in that guy's head for years, and that's just a bonus. Do you know how many copycats we've had to investigate as a result of that beachside venture from the former director?
Is that right?
Do you know how many agents I've had to take offline from chasing down child sex predators, fentanyl traffickers, terrorists? Because everywhere across this country, people are popping up on social media and think that a threat to the life of the President of the United States is a joke and they can do it because he did it. That's what I'm having to deal with every single day. And that's what I'm having to pull my agents and analysts off because he thought it was funny to go out there and make a political statement.
The 8647, the president said that he believed it was an assassination message. On assassination attempts, I did ask the president on the Middle East trip about this. Is there frustration on your part? Will we get transparency? Will we know the bottom line story?
It's very interesting because we have great people. I think Pam is incredible. I think Kash is incredible. I'm relying on my people to tell me what it is. You know, we have deep-seated craziness in this country, and I'm relying on my people, and so far they're good, but so far and in this case it's Secret Service, they tell me it's fine. But it's a little hard to believe, to be honest with you, okay? It's a little bit hard to believe as I get that throbbing feeling.
You know, it sounds like he wants more about at least the Butler guy that we don't know a lot about. Will we know a lot more about him? Is there more to know?
I don't know that there's more to know, but you're going to know everything we know. And that's the other thing we did. We take assassination attempts, especially of the President of the United States, extremely seriously. And we don't feel that the American people have been given the information they need on that. And we're digging through the files and we're getting them a more robust picture of what happened and whether or not there were any connections.
I get all that. And I also understand investigations underway and there's potential prosecutions for people who are living, but he's dead. And we knew a lot more about a lot of different people than we know about that guy. And you know, there's people that circulate all kinds of stuff, that it was an inside job or there was foreign influence or whatever. Can we say that it's not that?
And that's a great example of people looking for things where things don't exist. In that specific case, since that individual is dead, we are able to say a lot more, unlike the Merchant case in New York, which is ongoing, and whether or not there are any connections. We have definitively given that information over.
You were recently up on Capitol Hill answering questions.
When should we expect this FY25 spend plan for the FBI? Have you seen it? Have you reviewed it? When will we get it?
I'll get you an answer, ma'am. I don't have a timeline on that.
It was due last week by law.
I understand.
And your answer is you just understand you're not going to follow the law?
My answer is that I am following the law, and I'm working with my interagency partners to do this.
It is budget season.
Yeah.
And should you have laid out a budget by then to Congress? Because everybody is looking to how much you're going to spend and how much they're going to take from perhaps you to make this all work.
Do I have a budget at the FBI? Sure, of course I do. But the Office of Management Budget at the White House sets the budget for the United States government. And so if they have a budget which we agree with, they need to roll that out. And they're doing so on their own timeline and working with Congress on that. What I'm telling the American people is that We will be stewards of the taxpayer dollars no matter what budget we are given, and focus on these priorities: crushing violent crime, defending the homeland, and fierce organizational accountability. And we'll make it happen. We're not the guys running around on private jets. And somebody maybe in Congress should ask for how many flights on a private jet Director Comey took, or my predecessor Director Wray took, and how many personal trips they took. I know they want to take pot shots at me, but I've been working nonstop on this job, including pretty much every single weekend. And somebody should ask the tens of millions of dollars that were wasted on personal junkets by prior FBI directors before lecturing me on a budget for the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
But you have a good sense from the White House what it looks like, and are you going to be able to operate in that parameter?
I am. We are in a very good position.
When do you want everyone out of the Hoover building? You say you want to move out of that building. Where would the new headquarters be?
I can tell you that we are in the process of moving out. We've just worked out the final logistics to begin that process, and we are actually in line with keeping the American taxpayer dollars on mission, shuttering about 6 different offices the FBI has in the D.C. area, and we're moving to our new location within the D.C. area, and that process has already started.
Which is where? Maryland?
We're staying in Washington, D.C., right next to our partners at the Department of Justice, and we're getting out of the Hoover building. I have cargo nets holding up the cement structures of the exterior of the Hoover building because it catches falling cement and prevents it from hitting someone in the head. I'm not making that up. Why no one in the past decided to address that standard or lack of standard and make that building unsafe is beyond me, but we're addressing it.
So you're going to leave that building and then go to another building next to Homeland Security?
Next to the Department of Justice.
Justice, got it.
Because we have to, this is a great point that I think people overlook. We are a component of the Department of Justice. Moving us an hour and a half outside of town. Every morning, do you know what me and the deputy do? We walk across the street to brief the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and the PAYDAG on the most pressing matters of the day. If we leave, how are we going to do that on a daily basis?
What's the thing that keeps you up at night?
The CCP, for a whole host of reasons we haven't even talked about, their cyber espionage campaign, what they're doing undersea, what Russia's doing overhead in terms of space, and their cyber intrusion capabilities like Salt Typhoon. They have made wildly successful penetrations into our telecommunications infrastructure. And what they do is they suck up our information, Bret, and this is what keeps me up at night. They're playing the long game. The fentanyl production by the CCP, I firmly believe, is their way of killing tens of thousands of military-aged men and women in the United States of America. They are wiping out generations of Americans that could come here and be an FBI agent.
All right, so let's just talk to the future here. How do you see this? The job, is it different than you thought it was coming in? How do you look at it big picture?
Look, there's 2 ways I look at it. One, you're talking to a first-generation Indian kid whose parents fled genocide, and their son's now the director of the FBI. Only in America. Literally only in America. So I wanted to inspire people to come to places like this and train with us and serve this country. The other thing that I want people to take away from that is there is no job on God's green earth that prepares you to lead an agency or department. There isn't. Anyone who tells you otherwise is flat out lying or being politically preposterous. And I learn every single day. I learn from the leadership team. I have folks in there around my table every morning who come from so many different walks of life, people I disagree with on a daily basis. And I'm so glad that they're in that room because they are the ones helping me make these decisions. What we won't stand for is people turning around on social media and attacking folks who are doing the job. We will stand up for them. We will also out anyone who violates their oath of office at the FBI, intel analysts, agents, support staff, what have you. We already have. And every time we do, Bret, this is the thing the media doesn't pick up on. We announce it, but we don't take a victory lap. It's all out there. Dozens of people have been dealt with for politicizing the FBI, for weaponizing it. Everything from Hunter Biden's laptop to January 6th to Neil Team 6 and everything else has been dealt with. And we keep going.
Director Patel, we appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Maybe we could hit the kettlebells.
All right. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.